Well, I think from the start of this, it's been pretty evident there's, a clash in Minnesota. The football people want him back, and obviously some of the front office people are thinking about the off-the-field issues and sponsorship losses, and that's where the distrust came in. So I think if you're talking about the Vikings football brain trust, certainly Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman, the GM, they want Adrian Peterson back. The question is, can they kind of, close the gap to where he can sort of forgive the organization, because he's felt from day one that they didn't stand behind him. And by the way, I think the NFL is concerned with that thought process, because that kind of, speaks to the fact that Adrian Peterson is not accepting responsibility for his behavior, which started this entire process.
John, what are the scenarios, though, for him? Is it, hey, you don't want to play for us, you don't play at all? I mean, can Minnesota basically say, you don't want to play for us, you don't get paid, and you're out?
Well, yeah, if they want to hard line it, obviously he's under contract to the Vikings, and he can't play for any other team unless they move on from them. They've already been very, very clear-cut. They're not going to release him. That's not on the table, and they want value in return. So it's very difficult for any NFL team to give up, say, a first-round pick for a 30-year-old running back. Now, Adrian Peterson's a little different than most running backs. I think we all understand that. But that's just one hurdle. If you had a Dallas Cowboys team, for instance, willing to give up that first-round pick, well, then you have to talk about the salary cap and the fact that Peterson's number is $12.75 million. And if you think about where we are on the NFL calendar, free agency is in essence done. Everybody's kind of already allocated their assets. Everybody got excited when the Cowboys redid Tony Romo's deal and tried to put two and two together. But, I looked at the figures today. The Cowboys are about $12.8 million under the cap. Now that, raises eyebrows. And people say, well, Peterson's 12.75, so they made space for him. Yeah, but you also have to pay your draft choices. So the Cowboys would have to do significant more maneuvering to fit him under the cap, unless they redo a deal, extend him, get him to take less money. But that aspect is up to Adrian Peterson.
John McMullen, the national NFL columnist, sportsnetwork.com, as we look at some NFL news and notes this offseason. So ultimately, does it look like a situation where it's either Minnesota or nothing for Adrian Peterson, unless a team can either blow them away or get creative?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's only two teams in the equation besides the Vikings, and it would be the Cowboys and the Arizona Cardinals, because I think, Peterson at this stage of his career would want to go to a perceived contender. He doesn't want to go to a team like Jacksonville or Oakland that could kind of fit him in under the cap with little problem. But obviously they're a long way away from competing. So there's so many moving balls to this, and the bottom line is, as I said, Mike Zimmer wants him back. The Vikings think they have something going with Teddy Bridgewater, and they want to make it easier for him. And obviously, if you have a young quarterback and you have one of the best pure runners in the history of the game, that's going to force opposing defenses to play 7, 8, sometimes 9 men in the box. You used to see play against the Vikings when Christian Ponder was the quarterback. They feel Teddy Bridgewater can take advantage of those type situations. So from a football standpoint, they want him back. And the big date's April 20th, because that's the first day of off-season work for the Vikings. And we'll see if Adrian shows up or if he wants to go all out with this and kind of force his hand and force the issue.
John, let's look at Johnny Manziel. He's out of rehab. What is his future with Cleveland? Is it in Cleveland, or do you anticipate him being moved? And would anybody have interest in Manziel, or is he basically a throw-in situation on any deal?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get anything of value from him after that disaster season. I mean, I think you would certainly get a second chance somewhere. But, if the Browns were looking for value, anything more than a seventh-round pick that might be conditional, they're certainly not going to get that. And to me, if you look at what Cleveland has done, Ray Farmer's been pretty clear, the GM there, they understand they can't count on him. That's not to say he's not in the plans, but if the Browns are not able to bring in a quarterback in the draft, and there's talk about them because they have 2 first-round picks trying to trade up to get Marcus Mariota, if they're not able to do that, Josh McCown is the veteran there, the stopgap, but he's a 35-year-old journeyman. Johnny Manziel will be given every chance, every opportunity to win that job. But everything you saw from him last year, not only the off-the-field stuff, we all know what a disaster that was, but the on-the-field stuff, he clearly wasn't ready for the NFL, clearly didn't understand what he was in for, and the Browns have that mentality that they just can't count on him.
John McMullen's with us, the NFL editor, sportsnetwork.com. Let's look at the NFL draft, some news and notes there, John. Jameis Winston sued by a sexual assault accuser just 2 weeks before the draft. Now, we knew this could have been down the pipeline. Does this affect him at all leading into the draft? Do you think this is something that's going to make the Buccaneers think twice?
Well, I think people are already thinking that. You've kind of seen things morph, and some high-profile guys out there have already put Mariota ahead of Winston and kind of claimed Tampa Bay might think about it. I don't believe that personally. I think it speaks volumes that Outside the Lines reported today that no NFL team has contacted the Florida State Attorney about Jameis Winston, so they don't think a lot of it. The timing of it, is just smacks of a money grab, let's be honest. And I think that's how people in the NFL are looking at it. I've been steadfast on this from pretty early on. Lovie Smith wants Jameis Winston, and if he's not in Tampa, to me that indicates a rift in the front office between him and Jason Light. And if Winston doesn't end up with the Buccaneers, that means, Lovie Smith is not going to be with the Buccaneers very long.
John, I want to close the book on this Aaron Hernandez case as well. I know months ago we talked about this, and now let's take a look. Obviously people get charged with murder every single day in this world, and we don't talk a lot about it. But this was a guy who at one point pretty high-profile organizations and colleges thought very highly of. They gave him $40 million in New England. He played at the University of Florida. What does it say about the sports culture, particularly possibly the NFL or football, that guys like this are making this kind of money and getting in trouble all the time? Does it make you really evaluate what more the NFL needs to do?
Well, I wrote about it. I think the NFL made a mistake by ignoring it. If you looked at it, the NFL Network didn't break in. Didn't talk about it. I think they were just showing Pittsburgh Steelers highlights, and I think that's a mistake because, I understand the natural inclination to want to run away from it from a PR standpoint, but I think they should use it as a learning tool and kind of explain to young players, look, this is what can happen if you don't get yourself away from bad crowds. And you're talking about a guy, as you mentioned, that had just signed a $40 million contract extension, had a beautiful home, a beautiful fiancée, a young child, and that didn't matter to him. He got caught up in the gang culture, never left it. We're talking about a likely serial murderer, not just one murder. He shot another man in the face. People don't talk about that. This is a bad guy. And, I know a lot of people don't like the Patriots and kind of want to pile on. But, when you think about people in general, you don't want to believe that people are that bad. So, I think the Patriots were blindsided by it, just like most of it. And, for the league, I think one of the bigger concerns is the fact that all the talk about his drug use and his addiction to marijuana and laced with PCP and things like that, it shows you just how ineffective the NFL's drug policy is as a whole. So I think that's an issue. But, in all aspects of life, as you mentioned, Mike, there's going to be people like this. It's just it seems more tragic when you have the means to get away from that kind of lifestyle. And Aaron Hernandez refused to do it.
John, let's look at the NFL draft. We are less 2 weeks away, and I know this is getting interesting. You just mentioned some people are starting now to go Mariota at the top. In your opinion, let's start with him. What is the lowest? I know we've talked before, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you thought that there's a potential he could slip. Is that still something that you see happening?
No, I don't think he is going to slip now. I think he'll eventually end up at number 2. It's just a matter of what team trades up to get him. The Titans have no interest in him. Don't believe any of that. They want no parts of him. I think the easiest way for any team to get up is San Diego. So if the Chargers have a legitimate interest and are willing to part with Phillip Rivers, they can get it done easily. The other teams, the likely candidates, and the fact that the easiest teams would obviously be Washington, the Jets, and Chicago, simply because they don't have to move that far. And then you have all the others, and that's where the Eagles come in. That's where Cleveland comes in, as we just talked about with the 2 first-round picks. The Chargers, as I mentioned, because they have the one asset that nobody else can match, and that's a truly elite quarterback in Phillip Rivers. And also New Orleans to a certain extent, because they're looking for the heir apparent to Drew Brees, and they have a couple first-round picks. But one of those teams, I think, is going to make the leap and try to get up and get him. So I don't think he's going to slip very far. The farthest to me would be number 6 in the Jets, because I think if he falls there, I think the Jets take him.
John, who is, in your mind, the third quarterback? We know the first 2, obviously. Is it Hundley? Is it Bryce Petty? Who's your third guy? I know your mock draft is up over at sportsnetwork.com. Which guy do you feel is the third guy?
Yeah, I think it's Hundley. Garrett Grayson is, a guy who is getting a lot of buzz right now, and you mentioned Bryce Petty. Some of the same concerns with Petty are with Mariota, and the fact that he played in the spread offense in college, and there's a concern how he projects to the next level. Hundley, this is not a great quarterback draft. That's just the bottom line. He to me, I would be very concerned with taking him, because the pocket presence is just not there. And I don't think that's something you can really teach. I think that's one of those innate things. Guys tend to have it or they don't. So that's a big concern for me. But athletically, he's got everything NFL scouts want. So I think he's going to be the third quarterback taken. I don't think it's going to be in the first round. I think it'll be in the second round. But this is a year, if you're looking for a quarterback, this is not the year for you, because this is a very, very quarterback-like draft.
How about if you're looking for a wide receiver? It seems that last year was very wide receiver heavy, and it seems like that's the case again.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of amazing because, last year, some people have said that it's the best wide receiver draft in the history of the game, and this year we got a chance to be even better. It starts with Kevin White and Amari Cooper, and it's sort of whatever flavor you like with those 2 guys. But then there's a host of other prospects, and there could be as many as 6 or 7 receivers going in the first round. And if you think about all the talent that was there last year, it's amazing how many good receivers are going to be coming into this league over a 2-year span.
John McMullen with us here talking about the NFL draft, the NFL editor, sportsnetwork.com. The Eagles, let's look at them real quick at number 20. A lot of people obviously feel that they are a prime candidate for a move up. Is in the days leading up now to the draft, has that been silenced a little bit, or are you still more on the side that Chip Kelly has something up his sleeve?
Well, until there's a Sam Bradford extension, you can't say he's going to be the Eagles quarterback. I mean, that's pretty clear. So, Chip Kelly doesn't have a history. And, I use the word unhinged, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean it in a football sense. You don't know what this guy's going to do. He's at least, he's willing to do some very, very bold things. And whether he wants to mortgage the future to try to get a quarterback he obviously likes, I don't know if he has the ammunition to do so, but I think he will try until the very, very end. To me, as I said, the bottom line is he can't trump a team like San Diego, which has Phillip Rivers to give, if they want to go in that direction. He can't trump a team like the Jets, who are sitting at 6, or the Redskins if they decide they want to move on from RG3, which I think is unlikely. So I think he will try to do everything in his power to get him. I just don't think he has enough ammunition. So at that point, you start looking at likely positions at 20. And to me, it's cornerback and wide receiver. We just talked about how deep the wide receiver draft is. And guys like, Brashad Perriman, Philip Dorsett, Jalen Strong, any of those could be there. But I keep hearing the Eagles love the cornerback from UConn, and that, to me, is their first-round choice if they stay at 20.
Yeah, Byron Jones, you have him there at number 20 in your latest mock draft. John McMullen, the NFL editor, sportsnetwork.com, here on 97.3 ESPN. I noticed Todd Gurley going in the first round to the Chargers at 17. Regardless of what team gets him, do you think a running back, Gurley, goes in the first round, or is that just because they have a need at that position?
No, I mean, he's going to go in the first round. It's just a matter of where. And as you mentioned, it's been a long time. It's 2 full years there hasn't been a running back drafted in the first round, and there is going to be this year. Gurley's going to be drafted. Also, Melvin Gordon from Wisconsin is going to be drafted in the first round. I don't think there's any question about those two guys. And, if Gurley didn't tear his ACL in November of last year, he would have been a top 10 pick. There's a lot of people in the NFL that think he is the most dominating prospect at that position since Adrian Peterson, and if he holds up and he's healthy, he's got a chance to be a real difference maker. So I don't think there's any question, even with the injury concerns, that he's going to go in the first round. I
want to ask you about the one guy in particular, because we've got questions about wide receiver and Dorial GreenBeckham. I see that he dropped out. Give a little backstory about him to our listeners as to the talent he has, but why he may not be a first-round pick.
Well, he's got top, 15 talent. There's no question about it, but he didn't even get on the field last year at Oklahoma after transferring from Missouri. So you're looking at a guy who's had a lot of problems as far as off-the-field stuff, but he's a physical specimen, and anytime you have that, and the triangle numbers, as they call it in the NFL, size, speed, strength, he's got everything. Probably would be right there with Kevin White as far as a total prospect athletically. And there's a chance that somebody, ignores the red flags and takes him because he's got that kind of talent. But as I said, he was dismissed from Missouri after, pushing a female. We all know how concerned the NFL was with domestic abuse these days. So I think at the end of the day, that kind of stuff is going to have him tumbling out at the first round. But at least from a pure football sense, somebody's going to get a bargain if he's able to keep his nose clean.
All right, for more from John, head over to his Twitter page. Follow him there at JF McMullen. And, of course, John here with us on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN with a look at the news and notes surrounding the NFL less than 2 weeks now from the draft, which will be held in Chicago this year. And you can hear it all live on 97.3. Thanks, John.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.